Mentorship and apprenticeship is a key aspect of getting better at any skill you're trying to learn. And for most jobs, it's rather easy to find an apprenticeship or a mentorship role. Let's say you're a plumber or a construction worker, it's probably going to be easy to find someone to teach you how to do something better. However, software development is quite different in that way because most of us are either working on something by themselves like a SaaS or a business. They're looking for a job, so they're unemployed. They work from home, or we're currently learning how to code. And without any sort of mentorship or advice, it's actually quite difficult to make any progress or see significant progress because we don't have the support and lessons from those that are better than us. And you know what? I don't like that. So I decided to reach out to a couple of YouTubers and content creators in our space and ask them for any advice that they would have for new developers. And since most of us watching this are at least 1 year or less into our coding journey, I'll show you the poll that I made. There's advice here from huge content creators like Theo GG, WebDev Cody, Dorian Develops, Josh Tried Coding. Just a bunch of great advice, and yeah, let's get into it. Now, the first piece of advice here comes from WebDev Cody, and he just says, find a mentor you can code with, or at least someone good who you can watch live code. Context, I spent so much time just trying to code by myself, and it wasn't until I joined a company that did pair programming, was until I learned how to actually code for real. I think this is totally true. I personally experienced this, not to the level of, Cody over here, since I haven't worked at a big company. But I really saw a significant jump in code and my skill of programming when there was a group of people that was judging me and my code. And especially if you're in that process of either trying to find a job or trying to start businesses and you need to get good at coding, this is so important. And I think what Cody's trying to say is whether it be finding a job, doing open source projects, or watching live videos, doing those things will really help you. And honestly, this is just great advice. And now the next piece of advice comes from Theo GG or T3GG. I'm not really sure which one to say. And he just says, build something you actually want to use. Otherwise, you'll never know when you're quote unquote done. I have a whole video about it called Your Goals Kinda Suck. Many of us will want to work on a project, maybe because it's popular, trendy like AI, or just work on something because of the money. And we often neglect working on something for the sake of our own interests. And it's so true that you'll never know that you're going to be done because you're always going to find a way to improve it. You're always going to try to find mistakes and you're always going to try to postpone it. As soon as I started working on projects that I enjoyed, like the My Workout SaaS, and now I'm working on a game winner predictor for the soccer championships, I really started to enjoy the process of coding and doing all the boring work. Going through the process, typically that is boring, just becomes interesting and you actually have an end goal. And now the next advice comes from the coding sloth. Man, I love his content. And he basically says, my advice would be to stop comparing yourself to others and to try your best to have fun. You'll just stress yourself out and end up quitting. And then most importantly, he says, oh, and eat your veggies. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. Eat your veggies. And now all jokes aside, comparison is quite natural in any skill, right? If you're a plumber, you're going to compare yourself to another plumber. If you're a soccer player, you're going to compare yourself to the better soccer players in your field. And I think this statement is so true, especially that a lot of people say to watch out for comparison. What's that famous quote? Comparison is the thief of joy or something like that. And as I've been coding, and I'm trying to take this advice personally, just really try to use it. It's so easy to just compare myself to other YouTubers, to compare myself to other developers and seeing what they're building and worrying oh shit, John over here, he's building out this great application. I'm so jealous. And it just takes the joy and the fun out of programming, which we often forget is the whole point that we're doing this for, right? What's the freaking point of programming and building apps and, trying to be a better developer if we're not having fun? And the single best way, in my opinion, to not have fun at something is to compare yourself to others. Now, the next piece of advice here comes from Husna, and she basically says to avoid comparisons, set clear goals, pace your learning, persistence pays off, and build small projects first. Finally, use resources and ask questions. I think this is just general great advice. Do all these things, right? Avoid comparisons. We already talked about that. Set clear goals. That's obvious. If you're trying to be a web developer, have that goal. Don't learn Python if you're trying to be a web developer, right? Take your time and really try to learn the contents, or else you're going to feel rushed. And I think the best one here, and one that really stood out to me, was just build small projects first. Don't lie, okay? Statistically speaking, you're a dude in your 20s, and as a guy, you want to build the coolest shit possible, build the next billion-dollar startup. But let's be real. We have to start out small. And I think whether your goal is to build the next Google or make 10K a month, I think being realistic with yourself, and as soon as you're starting out code, to know, hey, I'm gonna start with building out a to-do app or building out a simple landing page of a portfolio project. I think having that view first and then expecting to build bigger projects as you move on, I think that is amazing. You're setting yourself up for success. You can't go wrong with something like this. Now, Josh Tried Coding. His advice here tells us to choose a project idea that is above your skill level, where you're whoa, that's cool AF. No way I can make that happen. And then he says to build a project and learn learn stuff that you need for the build along the way naturally. I get what he's saying. And he finally says, you fucking made it happen and learned a ton along the way. No course, no concept-based learning needed. And you know what's funny is that I learned a lot and a lot of my programming concepts and programming in general from Josh Tried Coding. And he's saying, you know, build something on your own and like just don't rely too much on these videos. And fuck, man, I think this is so true. There's a bunch of tutorials, and I'm subject to this, like long tutorials. Build a Twitter clone in like 8 hours, or build a Discord clone, or build an Airbnb clone, or build this project or that project. And I think at a certain point, sure, those are helpful, but nothing's ever going to be as good as building something at your level or above your level, challenging yourself to build it and actually finishing it. You're just going to learn so much that way, right? And the general advice anyways is, hey, build projects, right? They say that, like, project-based learning. Building something above your level is just amazing. It's always going to help you. And you know, if you're in the position where you haven't done any projects, or you built simple projects and want to challenge yourself, look at where you are and see what you need to improve. For example, right now I'm building out a score predictor, like a game winner predictor. A challenging thing that I could be doing, or something to, you know, really help me improve as a developer, is to include a feature that I've never added before. Maybe it's like a live tracker, or calling an API in a weird way that I've never used. I don't know. Now the next advice here comes from Lewis from Code with Lewis. Freaking amazing channel. And he just says, I'd say my advice is to lower expectations of yourself and learn to love building versus expecting the end result. Coding is about trial and error and learning new things. This is how the passion and skills are built, which will put you ahead of any other developer. Wow, very wise words, bro. We're very well spoken. And you know, I think this says a lot, especially that second sentence. Coding is about trial and error and learning new things. And honestly, this just perfectly summarizes programming as a whole. Like every programmer, right? Whether again, you're the most experienced programmer or a brand new, just learn HTML, CSS type of developer, you're always going to go through the trial and error, whether that be learning a new language or struggling with a new language and running into bugs. Understanding that this is normal and a part of the coding process, that you're not always going to be perfect, that you're not always going to learn something on the first go, but you will run into errors, is a good thing to understand. And I think once you appreciate the errors in a weird way and understand that this is normal, programming just becomes so much more fun because you're not so hard on yourself anymore. The next piece of advice here is from Dorian Develops, and he says, build more and try to learn less. As new aspiring dev, I remember trying to learn everything, watching a bunch of videos, reading blogs and books, and I was building nothing. Too much theory and not enough practice. I spent a bunch of time learning, but when I opened up a text editor, I didn't know what to do. The real learning comes from building. You just have to figure it out along the way. The more you build, the more you'll learn. I mean, Dorian's just being really honest here. Build fucking projects. It's so easy to fall into the trap of always wanting to learn concepts. I gotta watch this new tutorial. I gotta learn this new JavaScript course. I gotta buy this next JS course. None of that will really mean shit if you're not actually applying. Everyone has a story. Do an 8-hour course, watching videos on JavaScript, and when it's time to actually apply it and build a project, you don't know how. And honestly, just look at like university students. Like, I'm sorry if you're a university student, but there's many of you that just don't know how to build stuff. You're watching too much videos, you're doing too many lectures, and you're not actually building stuff. And that is how you will learn. It's just how it works. And so if you're brand new at coding, or you're struggling with getting better at programming, look at where you're just watching too much theory and not applying enough. And so the final piece of advice here is from Dennis Ivy, and he says, I'd say frustration and imposter syndrome are just a part of the process, but no one here really knows anything. So pick something that seems interesting to you, language and project, and just start building. You put in enough hours into this and you'll get there. I promise. Time and effort is all you need. Pick something you enjoy. Understand that there's gonna be struggle. And I like his little 2 cents here that no one really knows anything. And this doesn't mean that no one like knows how to code. Sure, there's a lot of people that know how to code. No one knows everything, right? We all will always feel some sort of weakness, and that we'll always feel like we are missing something. But yeah, these are just some of the advice that we have gotten. A huge shout out to all of these people. I'll leave all their channels down below for you to check out. But yeah, if you like these types of videos, then please let me know. You know, I'll try to make more of these if you did enjoy it. Happy coding, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.